5 years ago, Art Acevedo was appointed as the 8th Chief of Police in Austin. Since then, Austin has seen a drop in citizen complaints against the police, as well as a rise in officer discipline and suspensions. Many people attribute this to Mr. Acevedo's tenure as chief. However, his job as police chief comes with controversy. Are you one of those who filed a complaint? Are you one who has filed a lawsuit? Can we get better at policing? Or are we satisfied? Our conversation today on Access News is with the man himself, Austin Chief of Police Art Acevedo. You're watching Access News, hands-on news. Welcome back to Access News. We're happy you're back with us.
Well, it's great to be back. I enjoyed it last time, and it's been too long. I hope we don't wait so long next time.
We'll be sure to do that next time. Let's get right to it. Okay. A lot of people say that citizen complaints have reduced and that officer discipline has increased, and that's based on your leadership. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think it's based on creating a culture of accountability. I'm proud of the fact that although citizens' complaints are down, officer complaints, internal complaints are up, which means our people recognize the difference between excellence and mediocrity, and they're holding each other to a high standard, which is good.
How do you deal with the increase in officer discipline? I'm assuming that that leads to more officer complaints.
No, I mean, listen, our folks, by and large, will rise to the level of expectation that you set. Wherever you set that bar, they're going to rise to the challenge generally. And as long as they know they're being treated fairly and that you're consistent as a leader and there's no favoritism and people are not treated differently depending on who they are, they understand it. They understand that wearing this uniform is a privilege they have to earn, and it's a privilege they have to earn from day one to their last day 20, 30 years later.
Very true. Last time we were here on Access News, we talked a little bit about Esther Valdez.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most of our viewers remember that that's the case of the deaf woman who was arrested because she didn't hear the officer behind her yelling for her to stop. Now, with the lawsuit that's happened since then, what have you done to address those issues?
We actually worked together with her and her attorney to come up with a solution, which is really what they were interested in, is more of training, providing additional training to our officers, because I think that everybody was trying to act in good faith and maybe out of a lot of misunderstanding. And awareness and training, I think, goes a long way in making things better. But like I said last time, just remember that for the hearing impaired community, that you don't have a sign around your head that says you're hearing impaired, and the officer doesn't know that either. So just stay calm, and to me, the international sign for me is to point to your ear, and I don't know what would be in sign language, but we'll figure it out, and hopefully we can de-escalate right away. But the training's better.
How's it better?
We're providing it more frequently. We've actually gotten the input of the community, and I think that as we move forward, one of the groups that our cadets will be immersed with in our immersion program at the academy will be the hearing impaired community, so they can learn firsthand the challenges. We've done it before, we're going to do it again.
I know you are a fluent Spanish speaker, correct?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
I'm wondering if you see Spanish and ASL as similar. Are there parallels there? Is an ASL just like any other foreign language, or do you feel like you fully understand the difference between a spoken versus a sign language?
No, to me it's just another language, and one of my frustrations is that my fingers don't have the coordination to learn the language. I'm kind of an uncoordinated guy, and I wish I could learn it, but I just don't know if I have the dexterity in my hands to do it. But it is another language. And the most important piece is that we have the resources so when a person becomes a victim or a witness to crime, that they can tell their story in their own language so we can get it right. To me, that's huge and something we work very hard at.
I agree with you. It's very important that a person who witnesses a crime is able to give details on that crime so that the police can do their job better. One tidbit I'd like to mention is that ASL and Spanish, as they're both foreign languages, but ASL I don't think is as simple as some other foreign languages. For instance, a hearing person could learn Spanish if they wanted to. A deaf person can't learn to hear. Right. Per se, so there's a big difference there. It's maybe something for you guys to just kind of keep in mind. But going back to the lawsuit, I know that this is the second lawsuit that's happened, and it makes me wonder, will there be another lawsuit in 5 years, or is your department, what are we doing, to make them aware of deaf culture in ASL?
I think, first of all, we need to continue to really keep it on the forefront for our officers with ongoing training, refresher training. But the most important thing is, you've mentioned 2 lawsuits, and I can tell you that we have hundreds of contacts, if not thousands of contacts with the hearing impaired community every year. And if you think about 2 lawsuits versus hundreds or thousands of contacts, I think we're doing okay. The bad outcomes are the exception and maybe not the rule. But the bottom line is that you in the hearing impaired community, if we're not doing it right, you need to let us know, because we can't get better if we don't know when we've had opportunities where we fell short.
What's the best way to let you know?
Contact the police department. Contact the police department. Contact the Office of Police Monitor, because I really feel that our officers, by and large, try to do the right thing, but sometimes they may not be sensitive. Sometimes they may not get it. And to me, when we don't get it right, we can't lose that learning opportunity. That's why it's important to have that ongoing dialogue and not just wait till it's something really bad.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that point, and I agree. I'd like to kind of change topics on you here regarding breaking laws. Are officers allowed to break laws? I mean, do police have to signal when changing lanes? It seems like a lot of officers don't. They go about their business, but suppose a citizen were to see an officer change lanes and not use a signal, what could be done? Well,
if you see an officer, first of all, just remember this, at times when an officer appears to be speeding or driving way too fast or in and out of traffic, if they're going to the donut shop, that's a problem. But more often than not, they're going to an emergency call, and so they're.
Why don't they have their lights on?
Well, because when you turn on lights sometimes, especially on a freeway, it freaks everybody out, and people don't know what to do, and people are slamming on their brakes, and it creates almost creates a more dangerous environment. But if you think that an officer is driving recklessly or inappropriately, we all have 4-digit numbers on the side of the car. And all you have to do is call that in, and we can research what the officer was doing to see if there was any justification. But at the end of the day, they must drive in a reasonable manner, regardless of whether they're going to an emergency or not.
Good to know. Yeah. Thank you. Last time that you were here, we talked about, I asked about how the public could help the APD. And you said, be a good neighbor, be a nosy neighbor. So, in other words, report suspicious activity.
Absolutely.
And that brings up George Zimmerman, the situation that happened in Florida recently. He was armed and a neighborhood watchman, so to speak, and ran into what he deemed a suspicious man, which we now know as Trayvon Martin. And the result was that Trayvon was shot and killed, and it turned out that he was unarmed and seemed to just be walking home. But that brings up, is there a concern about being a nosy neighbor, about that philosophy? Does that bring up any concerns?
Well, I've been around this business long enough to know that what you read in the media may or may not be the whole picture. And so I don't have enough firsthand knowledge of the evidence of the issues involving the Martin case. But I do know that right now we have a tremendous discussion involving stand your ground, hold your ground, the stand your ground laws. And I think that people need to understand that if somebody's stealing your property, is that really worth taking a life? And I'll give you an example. As police officers, we cannot use under Garner versus Tennessee versus Garner, we cannot use deadly force to apprehend a suspect that's only wanted for property crimes. You just can't do it. And I'm not sure that we should have laws that allows people that as somebody's running away from after stealing a piece of property that we should be shooting those folks. I think that somewhere along the line we need to bring it a little bit back and make it so people only use deadly force when their lives are truly at risk. We actually made an arrest here in Austin last year of a man who shot a young man who was involved in an accident, a traffic crash, and was in his front yard in his driveway. Then the young man left the driveway, and next thing you know, he gets shot by this homeowner. And that homeowner is now facing felony charges. So you should never use deadly force unless your life or somebody else's life is in imminent danger. Period.
So in some ways, you're saying you do support stand your ground laws, or no?
Well, to me, it's not stand your ground. It's defend yourself or someone else from being seriously hurt or killed. Short of that, you should not be doing it.
Just defend, self-defense is basically.
Self-defense, that's absolutely. You know, a guy walking away should not be shot.
Okay, right. But what about the philosophy about being a nosy neighbor? In what circumstance should we be nosy?
Well, being a nosy neighbor means pick up the phone and call 911 and let the people that are police officers that are trained on how to deal with these situations. Being a nosy neighbor means if you see somebody breaking in, you call 911. I guarantee you in our department, we will be there in a matter of minutes, probably 5 minutes. Position yourself where you can see and hopefully not be seen, and just stay on the line and tell the dispatch, the 911 operator, what's going on, so our officers will know where to find the bad guy. That's the best thing to do. Be nosy, report it, but don't confront unless all of a sudden you think somebody's being raped or somebody's being murdered. At that point, then, you know, we need to defend one another to the best of our ability.
Thank you for clarifying that. And you mentioned earlier about deadly force.
Yeah.
And really, the use of deadly force is an important part of what you do. And you force people to do things that they don't want to do. That's part of your business. Sometimes that leads to deadly situations. I know one of your officers, the first in 8 years, who died in the line of duty, Jaime Padron.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a tragic accident. But he was called to investigate an intoxicated man, and that led to his death. And so sorry to hear that happened. But in that situation, what could have been done to avoid his death?
You know, well, don't show up. You know, if we don't show up, we don't have to worry about being hurt. But in that situation, I really believe, based on what I know, and it's an ongoing case that I don't want to jeopardize, I really believe that man went in there to kill a police officer. He went in there intent to kill a police officer. And when you're dealing as police officers in a democracy, it's not like we're a third world nation where we just walk up to people all the time and just shoot them for no reason. We're always reactive. Quite frankly, at the majority of the time, we're reacting and we wait till somebody escalates before we escalate. And so we're really at a disadvantage. You never know when something can turn sideways on you. And the tragic thing about Jaime is that he was doing his job, and I don't know what he could have done differently other than not showing up at the call. Sad deal.
When you talk about an escalating situation, in what way does the APD, what do they do to de-escalate the situation?
We teach our people about verbal judo skills, you know, how to talk to people, how to use demeanor, how to use, you know, maybe being a little louder. And one of the challenges with the hearing impaired community is that we have to use, I think facial expressions say a lot. And I tell you, stop, whether you can hear me or not, get over there, whether you can hear me or not, conveys a message. So we teach our people to have that command presence and to be able to control people with as much as possible with gestures and with verbal commands as opposed to hands-on. With that said, I believe that a confident officer, a well-trained officer, is an officer that's better prepared to take care of business and less likely to have to use deadly force. So we've trained our people on ground fighting in the last couple of years, how to take people to the ground and actually fight them and secure them. We're now training our people every month on the use of deadly force, on actually going to the range, and it's scenario-based, based on situations we've actually had, to work on their critical thinking skills. And so we've really increased our training across the board, and I think that's going to make us a much safer department, and one that's better prepared to respond to any eventuality.
I think all the training that you're doing is wonderful, and as you know, really it's as much as we can do, because you know, in general, there's a lack of trust from the public for the police, and I know that's one of the things that you struggle with on a daily basis, is that the public doesn't always trust you guys. Now, every time you know, you're approached by a police officer, it doesn't have to be a negative situation. For example, the cameras in downtown, one of the things that may lead to mistrust, the police can watch the citizens, but the citizens can't watch the police. Another example is that someone accused of a crime can't lie to a police officer, but a police officer can lie to that citizen.
You can't lie in a report. You cannot lie in a report. You can't lie under oath. You can't lie in terms of, I'll fire you. I mean, in our department, we say if you lie, cheat, steal, or use excessive force, you're not going to be a cop much longer. The piece about filming police officers, you can film us all you want. I want you to go to YouTube. You're going to see, and run the Austin Police Department. You will see hundreds upon hundreds of videos of our officers being videotaped. What you can't do is interfere. You can't engage the police officer, get in their space, because while you're getting in my space and I'm trying to deal with the suspect, that suspect at any time can turn around and become aggressive, can get a knife, can get a gun. And so what people need to understand, videotape all you want. There's a difference between videotaping and agitating. Don't be an agitator if you really want to be holding police officers accountable. And quite frankly, if you really want to catch us doing something wrong, if that's what your real intentions are, why are you coming up and letting us know you're filming? Film incognito, where we don't know what's going on, and maybe you'll catch us doing something wrong. So there's a lot of disingenuous folks out there that are trying to get people to believe they're just trying to capture the cops doing something wrong, when what they're doing is actually confronting the police officers, trying to get a reaction from the police officers, getting in the police officer's space, which is not allowed under the law. So film all you want, please. We want you to film, because the majority of the times we're doing the right thing and we want it captured on tape.
Good to know that you have that confidence in your police officers. I
Absolutely.
do want to go back to one point, though, about lying to citizens. It's good to know that the police can't lie on reports and so forth, but what about when they're trying to pull information from a citizen about a particular crime or an incident?
That's called an interrogation technique, where, and I've used it on police officers that I've investigated, where I will put videotapes on I'll give you this sample. I had many years ago a cop that kept getting this homeless guy, basically kidnapping him and putting a gun to his head and just pulling the trigger. No bullets in the gun, but does it matter, really? The only evidence I had was the statement of a homeless, drug-addicted man. That's the only evidence we had. Not really evidence, just a statement. So the technique that I used was put a bunch of videotapes, fingerprint cards, everything on a table, and I brought the police officer in, and I interrogated him, and guess what he did? He confessed to 4 felonies. The law says that you can use that as long as you don't say something that would make an innocent person confess to a crime that they didn't commit. For example, if I told you, if you don't tell me you did it, we're going to kill your kid, somebody might confess, okay? So that's where you draw. There's a very distinct line that cannot be crossed, and that's why we always videotape all of our interrogations and interviews with suspects, so the court and the jury can judge for themselves if that line was crossed.
That line can be really fine, I can imagine. Yes. Explain the difficulties that you face when people talk to you about using deadly force related to investigating a case. Okay, so when there are minorities involved with a case, maybe not armed, there's been a lot of situations that were very controversial about deadly force and those kind of situations. What's your opinion on deadly force when the individual is unarmed?
Well, an unarmed person can kill you just as easily as an armed person. We had a situation, and you're probably talking about the Bradley case, that the officer's in a fight for his life. The suspect grabs his microphone cord that I don't have on this radio, is trying to choke the officer with it. We have 911 callers, including minority lady, who's calling not for the suspect who the officer's fighting, but calling fear for the life of the officer who was in a life and death struggle. And so, you know, normally, in most circumstances, an unarmed suspect is not going to be shot and would not be justified. But when you're in a violent fight for your life, where the suspect's bigger than you, and where the suspect's getting the upper hand on you, deadly force can be may be appropriate. But the bottom line is this: one of the challenges that we have in our society is that people want to focus on the outcome. People want to focus on the end of the incident. Somebody's been shot and killed. But nobody wants to talk about how did we get there. You know, there's a common denominator too frequently, and it's a tragedy. It's usually a young man, anywhere in their late teens to early 30s, who's dropped out of school, who at some point got involved with a drug addiction, who then engaged in a pattern of criminal activity, and lastly, who was violently resisting arrest. That's what got us there. And I think until we...
But it also happens that those kind of guys are minorities, right?
Well, it's sad. But you look at our prisons, if you look at our dropout rate, Hispanics and African American males are dropping out at a 55% dropout rate. It is, and the reason I don't really watch these political conventions is nobody's talking about that. Nobody cares because it's not their child. We care in the Austin Police Department. That's why we've invested our time and resources on youth programs, building relationships and planting seeds of trust with kids that are at risk, kids who are in single parent homes, kids who are being raised by grandparents, and kids who have parents in prison, because they need to know just because there's been challenges in their lives, we still care about them, we still value them, and if they make the right choices, they can be successful and break that cycle of violence, that cycle of criminal activity, and that cycle of dropping out from school. And I hope you come out and visit us so we can show you these programs. You take this show on the road.
I would love to come visit you, or you come visit me at work, so I'd be happy to visit you at work.
We need to take this show on the road so you can see what the Austin Police Department's doing to help kids.
That would be great. That would be great.
And make them be successful.
Well, we have 2 minutes left. So in that 2 minutes, tell me, what laws do you wish you didn't have to enforce? Maybe there are some laws you feel like should be repealed.
Well, what's happening right now in our country is that this is the country where the word diversity and immigration, those two words have become like four-letter F words. You know, it's diversity and immigration is what made this country great throughout our history. It's what makes us, a nation that is different from all other nations, because we've always welcomed folks. There's a big push because of the economic downturn to have local law enforcement enforce immigration laws. It's ridiculous. We don't have the resources. We can barely get to 911 calls sometimes. We just had a report that came out, a study that the council here in Austin commissioned, that shows we're about almost 300 officers short of where we should be. And now you want me to have my officers go to the Home Depot to get the day laborers to see if they're legal or illegal and then take them to jail. That is just a very poor use of precious resources. The bottom line is, whether you're legal or illegal, if you're committing crimes, violent crimes, property crimes, trafficking crimes, we're going to go after you. So what does that leave behind? The nanny, the guy at the Home Depot that wants to be a day laborer, the cook, and those people are they're economic immigrants, and it's a civil matter, and we as a community should not allow politicians to put law enforcement in the middle of a political issue for political reasons that at the end of the day hurt public safety. And the last thing I want to say before I get out of here is that you mentioned mistrust of the police department. I don't really agree with that. I think there are some people that mistrust us. But I think that the night that Jaime Padron, that we had his funeral, his gift to us is that the respect, admiration, and support of this community was on display throughout all of Austin. Thousands of people came out holding signs, black, white, male, female, rich, poor, and that touched the hearts of our people. Because if all they ever heard from was the critics, they become cynical, and we don't want them to do that. It was a great, great gift that Jaime gave us, and my officers have told me that they're really proud to serve the people of this city, and there were a lot of tears that day when we had that motorcade after they saw the response of this community, and I wanted to thank the community for what they did for our people to help them get through this.
Thank you for sharing that final thought with us. You can learn more about the Austin Police Department on their website and at our website, accessnews.us, where you can ask questions, share your comments and opinions. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. One of the beautiful things about America is that we, the people, have power. The more we know, the better decisions we make. For Access News, I'm Tamara, and that's Austin.
Created, written, and executive produced by Devorah Ben-Moshe and Ken Hurley. Hosted by Tamara Suter-Okudo. Interpreter for Tamara Suter-Okudo, Jennifer Stoker. Special thanks to Texas School for the Deaf. Funding provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. Supported by Austin Community Foundation. Production by Austin Community College. Civication Incorporated, www.civication.org.